Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Do you think we should give 5 more minutes, Elena, or should we start now?
This is a British event.
I think you should
Yeah.
start, just to be fair to everyone who came on time. And
Yes.
I'll keep admitting people anyway. So welcome everyone, and Vânia Soares from Moneris will be the moderator, and we shall begin then.
Thank you, Elena. First of all, I'm very pleased to be here with this wonderful panel and some interesting topics that we are going to grasp in here. Before we jump to the questions for Sheree, Carlos, and António, I have here some numbers that I would like to show you to kick off our discussion. I had these numbers from our special interest group in tourism that we have in Moneris. We are preparing our yearbook for 2019, and we are including this year the first quarter of 2020 for obvious reasons, to talk about the COVID-19, the exposure of the sector of tourism and the consequences, the opportunities, and so on that we are talking about here too. I will share my screen in 1 minute or 1 second, maybe, right? I think you can see all, right? Here I have 3 charts, very general numbers for guests and for room nights. I considered here residents and non-residents, for we have a comparison. And we have here in the last 3 years a growth trend in all 3 indicators from January to April. And in March we had, of course, an accentuated drop. It's about 1/3 of guests and room nights. And in April, the numbers are close to 0. The situation of May, I think it will be very close to this, to 0. And we'll be in June, we'll be seeing how the market is adjusting. We passed from 6 million room nights, if we consider the residents and the non-residents, in April 2019. So from 6 million to 175,000 in 2020. We can also see here the dominance of non-residents, either in room nights and in guests also. It will vary from a range of 4 million to 1.5 million. So we have much more non-residents in room nights, which explains the magnitude of the pandemic in Portuguese tourism now and for the next few months at least. It's disappointing numbers, but real numbers. We were also counting on them, right? We see the situation at our eyes. It's a big challenge, and we know Portugal has been awarded with best destination the last 3 years, and we are considered also for many countries as a safe country regarding COVID-19. So I would ask the panel, maybe starting with Sheree, how do you perceive the attitude of international tourists towards Portugal? Do you think it may have changed during this past month?
That's a great question. That's something that I speak with my colleagues back in the US about a lot. Portugal has been a miracle story during this whole COVID-19 situation. And I congratulate the Portuguese government for acting very swiftly and intelligently to keep it under control. And the good thing is that a lot of news outlets in the United States picked up on that very quickly, such as the New York Times, one of our most trusted media outlets. And they started reporting on it like every 2 weeks. And so people in the US were being bombarded with how well Portugal was handling this situation, especially compared to other neighboring countries in the region. So it's only been a spotlight on how well, how safe Portugal has managed this. And I'm getting lots of requests from people, not just about wanting to visit Portugal in the future, but also considering Portugal as a retirement or a vacation home destination. So I think we look really good now. I'm including myself in that because I'm a resident of Portugal.
So Carlos and António would like to add something. What do you think it's the perception of the international tourists?
May I? Of course, I totally agree with Sheree. I just would like to add one or two additional information. I think that in this new context, not only in the pandemic situation, but even after COVID, people will look for less massified experiences. And I think that Portugal still has a very interesting number of undiscovered, or at least not so well discovered sites, such as Azores, the north of Portugal, of course, the center, Alentejo, off the coast, I would say that. But I think that we have very good conditions in the places that correspond to what people will look for in the future.
Okay, great thoughts.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. In preparation for this webinar, last week, I have called a few of my hospitality clients, companies I consult in the hospitality business. And I have called maybe 5 or 6 of them, and to understand from them the perception and how the international tourists are reacting. And most of them told me that although slowly the Germans are coming in, they have been having a lot of requests from British customers, although the Brits have not yet booked because of the restrictions imposed by the British government. And some of the Brits are telling that they would love to come over. They feel safe and comfortable to come this summer to Portugal, but the British government is imposing 2-week quarantine when they return back home. And so they are not willing to go through this hassle. So this is one of the reasons the bookings from British consumers and tourists and travelers are not yet confirmed. One of my clients told me that they're having a surprisingly big number of Portuguese people booking. So apparently the Portuguese are planning to spend summer in Portugal.
Right.
And so I would say generally the perception of the tourists, mainly in Europe, all my clients, they talked about European tourists. They talked about Germans, the Britons, and Scandinavians. Surprisingly, nobody mentioned Spanish, and also nobody mentioned tourists from outside Europe, which might be still early for non-Europeans to come over. Now, the only final thought I would make is that this recent sudden outbreak in the region of Lisbon might eventually change that perception. But this is very recent and the impact has not been felt so far. But apparently, so far, the tourists are not so afraid to come over, which is good.
Okay. But how, as you said, having in mind that tourists are less inclined to travel abroad, or they can possibly because the governments are not allowing it yet. And having in mind also that foreign tourists may be more hesitant about coming here, does the industry anticipate an increase in the ratio of domestic tourists and see a graphic totally different than that's what I have just showed you?
I believe so, clearly. I believe that this summer we will see an increasing amount of Portuguese tourists in Portugal.
Yes, do you think it's a tendency do you think it will continue to be like that in 2021? How do
Eventually.
you it? Yeah.
It's depends on
right?
how. It's very difficult to tell. We Portuguese, we like to travel. I myself, I love to travel. But I mean, this pandemic has been changing priorities recently. And nowadays people are more concerned with, I mean, you don't travel 10 hours, 12 hours, 15 hours sitting next to strangers anymore, anytime soon.
Yeah.
No, you don't fly to Brazil or to Bali anytime soon. So I believe Portuguese will increasingly spend vacations, holidays in Portugal until we have the vaccine.
Yeah, may I
and then we go out again.
Vania? I also agree with António, of course, and I think that from the point of view of the operators, of the camp, of the hotels, of the agents, and so forth, these demands some adjustment in their strategies, because they have maybe to adapt the offering, the way they communicate, and even the pricing to this target that is mainly made up of domestic tourists. So putting on this from the perspective of the economic agents, they have to change some points in their strategy.
Yeah, you've talked about the price. I think we can presume that clients may have less disposable income than normal this year and the next year, maybe. So do you think the industry can anticipate the need to discount in the short term? Should they do this? Are they doing this? What do you think that's happening or will happen the next few months?
That's a good question, Vania. And I'm not so sure if they should do, but they will. I'm sure about that, because they need money. The point is not the margin. The point is not the profitability. The point is getting customers. And I think that in some cases, at least, they will probably they will have to offer some discounts. But from my point of view, this is not a long-term solution. This is like taking an aspirin. It solves your problems or your headache, but it doesn't solve the real problem. In the long term, if we admit that people will have less money in the future because of the economic crisis, which is spread all over the world, I believe that
mais do que melhores.
Two adjustments.
São boas, muito boas.
One
colega meu, 16 anos no Paraíso.
Sorry, who has the speaker on? I don't know. Could you please turn it off?
Sentámos-nos com ele frente a frente.
I think it is.
Por favor, desliguem os microfones.
Okay, solve the problem.
Sorry.
As I was saying, maybe we need to have some low-cost offering. Why not? Why not? I'm not saying low quality, but more lean offering, maybe. And on the other hand, I also guess that some offers have to be repositioned to high target. So what can I say? I would say that middle class will probably be very much affected by the economic crisis. So to get same customers, maybe you need to offer some discounts. To get new customers, you have to change your positioning in the market so that you can attract higher income visitors.
Okay.
Vanya, I'd like to weigh in as well from my perspective. So we've reached out to a lot of our suppliers in Portugal, our hotels, our restaurants, and so on, over the past month, once it was actually not tone deaf to do so. And we wanted to know how were they positioning themselves, and what could we start looking forward to towards our contracts if things would change for this year if we were to get clients into Portugal. And the majority of them have not made any modifications whatsoever. So they're still holding their 2019 price points for fit, so for the free independent travelers as well as for group clients. I suspect that that will change over the next 2 to 3 months. I think maybe we'll have a more leverage in negotiating a different pricing system just for this time being, as Professor Brito mentioned, kind of as the aspirin, just to kind of get us through this illness, if we may. And then perhaps once the economy picks up again, or we're able to re-identify what our target groups are going to be for different properties, we can then sit down and have a long-term strategy. But I know from my market, our clients, even if they have not been affected by the economic crisis, they're expecting a discount. Even if they have not been affected, they're still expecting a discount. So there are different ways to discount, right? It's not always just off the top price. You can also discount by saying, if you book 3 nights, we give you an extra night. If you book 2 nights, we give you an extra night along those means as well, that I'm starting to see with a couple of high-end properties in Portugal.
Yeah, very interesting. Do you want to add something, António?
Yes, I work mainly the high-end segment of the market. And in that high-end segment, discounts are not well seen. And I understand, Professor Brito, you have to discount if you want to get more clients, but I would say not so much in the higher end of the segment of the market, in the higher end of the market. And if you have to discount, you offer service mainly. What I've been seeing, and from these calls I've made last week to a few high-end resorts in the Algarve and high-end properties in Porto and Lisbon, what they told me is that, and I find this very interesting, they're all trying to surprise guests with innovative services. I mean, when you've been locked down for so much time and you come back, you have to surprise customers, you have to surprise guests, and you have to offer them something they're not expecting. So instead of giving discounts in price, they're surprising guests, offering them new services. And that's mainly what you do in the higher end of the segment of the market.
Actually, I've been seeing that in addition to people willing to perhaps renegotiate the terms of the contract as well, just to get the clients in. So with some of the top properties here in Lisbon and Porto, maybe they're using a mix of both ways, both systems.
Yeah, and we are talking about the experience also, right?
In the high end of the market segment, it's very risky to give discounts.
Of course.
Very risky.
Of course.
It's good. It's good on the short term. It's very bad in the medium and long term.
But we have high-end properties in the US, really high-end properties that are discounting because they know that that's what the clients are expecting. So I think it just depends on.
It's a risky.
I agree with you. I agree with you. It is very, very risky.
It's a risk.
But I think people right now are just looking for ways to generate revenue and perhaps keep their clients, their faithful clients they've had all along, on board with them, knowing that everyone has been severely hurt during this economic crisis and this health crisis. Just trying to find ways to stimulate the economy and get people traveling again, knowing that this is a Band-Aid effect and not a long-term strategy.
Yeah, I agree with António that in premium market it is very risky to offer discounts, but I understand what Sheree is saying. At university, whenever we have now to renegotiate contracts, we always ask for a discount, even if it has nothing to do with the COVID. But we always say, well, because of situation, well, can you offer a discount? And in 90% of the cases, they offer a discount. Of course, we don't belong to the premium segment. I have to say this, but they are open to offer discounts. I think so.
Most luxury brands are raising prices.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
Surprisingly. Yeah, I have mixed feelings. I know it's difficult. It depends on exactly the nature of your business and the segment you're reaching out for. But anyway, we're talking about in general.
António was talking about experiences, right? When people come into an accommodation, a premium touristic, a premium vacation, and we often talk about the need to provide these experiences, make it memorable for tourists. We also speak about the need to digitalize the experience to cater for the expectations of the modern consumer. Carlos, with a specific reference to wine tourism, in which you have lots of experience, how do you enhance the experience digitally, having in mind that it is traditionally a very sensorial experience?
That's a good point, because apparently we cannot, but there's a trend towards that, and I have to say that one of the consequences of the pandemic is that it comprises time. Things that were expected to take 2, 3, 5 years, now they have changed in a couple of months. And one of the big changes has to do exactly with the digitalization of the economy, and in particular of the marketing. I would say that from the tourism point of view, we can consider that now the digital experience can be seen as a way of minimizing the threats created by the low-touch economy, which is a result of the pandemic, or we can see it as a way of maximizing opportunities, because I'm sure that there will be lots of opportunities created by this pandemic. In this regard, I would say that the digital economy in wine tourism cannot be seen as a plan B. If you see it as a plan B, as a way of solving or fixing some problems, you are not capturing all the possibilities that it creates. And considering this, that is digital experience, it is not a second class experience. I would say that we have two options. One is what we can say a blended wine tourism. Blended wine tourism means that you are combining virtual and offline physical experience. And this is, I would say, this is becoming more and more usual, because all of us, when we prepare a journey, a visit, a travel, we use the digital experience before the visit, during the visit, and after the visit. We use it before in the preparation of our travel, for booking, for getting early information. During the visit, it is important because we use it for information, for supporting our visit in terms, for instance, of mapping and so forth, and after for feedback, or I would say additional experience after the visit. So in this will be more and more common. But I guess that, Vania, you wanted a more radical response. You want that I would say, well, let's have a full digital experience, exactly is as if I had a bottle of wine and opening the bottle and smelling it and tasting. Well, I would say don't try to do exactly the same thing, because you will not, you cannot do that. But you can offer very interesting, I would say, virtual experiences. Firstly, virtual winery tours. You can use virtual and augmented virtual reality for visiting wineries and other estates, so that the tourists at home, they can have a very, very, I would say, unique experience. It is not the same thing, but it is a unique experience. On the second hand, I would like to suggest virtual tastings. Yes, because you can use virtual tastings in two ways. One, it is in large groups. I would say streaming large group tastings. People inscribe themselves in those tastings. If you plan this in advance, they even can buy the bottle of wine, or they can order it and receive it before the tasting. And then you organize a tasting that is watched by many, many people using these platforms, Zoom or so forth. You can have someone explaining wine, and maybe some of people who are attending, maybe they have the same wine and they can experience and share their experience. But you can also organize it in more, I would say, intimate small groups. In this case, you need more time for preparation, because people are supposed, in fact, to have the wines that will be tasted. And you can share on the basis of a Zoom platform, for instance, what you drink, the smelling, the taste, and so forth, and so forth. The third experience is what I call a private and customized wine events. You can organize on a virtual basis an event, a digital event, for instance, for companies, for groups of friends, for celebrations as anniversaries or so forth. One important thing, don't say that it is almost the same thing. No, it is not almost the same thing. It is a different experience, but it is a very interesting experience. And in some cases, these digital experiences, they create the need for a physical experience. So my suggestion is, yes, there's plenty of opportunities to use these digital experiences, even in wine tourism, but don't say that it is an approach. It is almost the physical experience, because it is not. It is a different experience with its own characteristics, with its own advantages, and in that way, it is not a second-hand experience. So use virtual reality, use Internet of Things, use artificial intelligence, and you will get a very, very interesting, unique, and memorable experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you. I have some questions from our guests, our participants. Nuno Alexandre talks about the António, what António was saying. He says, hello everyone, I totally agree with António. It took us many years to build the price we have today. In my opinion, what we need to communicate to customers is that the price now contains more service and a set of individual protection measures that guarantee the comfort and safety of everyone. It's most a commentary, not a question, but I have Ana Nogueira saying we have increased the price because decrease our capacity. It's a question here. However, we are trying to offer a better service, surprising our guests with, despite tests of COVID in the welcome. It's an issue, right? Can we drop the price and not have the total capacity?
Right. I'd like to go back and make sure that my position on this is properly stated. I agree. If you have a value added, if you have really worked hard over the years to build the service that you have, for the property that you have, and you've reached a certain price point pre-COVID, absolutely, that is where you want to aim for. However, if you're working with a tour operator, instead of working directly or reaching the client directly, then you may want to consider some flexibility in order to keep that relationship going with that third party that's bringing you clients. So if you have a long established relationship with them, I think that's something to consider. That is what I'm hearing from the industry that I'm in the United States. Tour operators who, outgoing travel agencies, as well as incoming tour operators that are working with suppliers and looking for suppliers who are obviously keeping the safety measures as the first priority, able to offer those extra services that we're discussing, and also flexible with the price point. In 2019, we'd reached a point where we were growing, and that growth is amazing for everyone. But at some time, there were questions about if the prices were inflated because demand was so high. And I think that this opportunity is giving us a chance to go back and actually see what the true value is and what the true services are. That's a conversation that we have with our local suppliers, and we work with the upscale. In the US, we would call it upscale because luxury is perceived differently in different markets. So we consider what you guys here in Portugal as luxury, we consider that as upscale and high end. Our suppliers, obviously all want to maintain their price point. We want to maintain our relationships, and we just have to find somewhere in the middle to meet.
Now, I couldn't agree more, Sheree. The clients I've called last week, they were mostly talking about their direct relationships with usual guests, with lifelong guests, and not tour operators. I believe that in tour operator business, you have to negotiate. Yes, that's the term. But when you offer a very sophisticated service and added value, demanding wealthy guests, they're not looking for discounts.
No, of course not.
Because they know if a place offers a discount, it will attract the type of people those discerning guests do not want to meet and share the space with. Right?
I agree, yes.
Good. So Vanya, back to you.
Yeah, I have here a question for Sheree about the American, the attractiveness of Portugal, the attractivity of Portugal for American tourists. In years gone by, they might consider Portugal as a few-day stopover, as a part of a wider European vacation. But now they are more likely to make Portugal the single destination for a vacation, a holiday. Can you tell us what marketing has taken place in the US to bring about these trends, and what more might be done and by whom to consolidate these trends?
You know, I noticed a difference between 2016 and 2017 with the American, if we were to say the American attitude or behavior towards Portugal. We have to take a couple of things in consideration. The United States is a huge country and it's many hours away from Portugal. It's not like being able to visit another European country. And the average amount of time that Americans have for holiday, for vacation, is 2 weeks. And that's even at, you know, CEO level in many cases. So we don't have as much vacation time as Europeans typically do. So normally when you do a transatlantic journey to Europe, you can usually visit 2 or 3 countries within a week and a half long period. In Portugal, being such a tiny country, has always been perceived as a day or 2 visit in the general Iberian Peninsula visit. So if I'm going to Barcelona or if I'm going to Madrid, I can also go to Lisbon or to Porto for a day or 2, right? And that way you can kind of understand how it was perceived as such. But around 2016, I think it may have been the summer, TAP Air Portugal, as it's called in the US, launched its first stopover program where they gave clients up to 72 hours to stop over in Lisbon or in Porto and experience the cities en route to their final destination, which would probably have been Spain or France or some other place in Europe that is a typical European destination for Americans. In addition to that time, there was increased terrorist activity. Do you guys remember that? I know now we see COVID as our main terrorist, but in 2014, 2015, 2016, there was increased terrorist activity in many major European destinations. So the attention changed to Portugal, the safe country in Europe that you could visit. TAP's creating all of these routes to go there. They had this wonderful stopover program, amazing prices. Let's go check out Portugal. And there was a third factor. The gastronomic revolution was starting to take place here. So we had many journalists from North America, Canada, and the US who were writing about all of the wonderful chefs and food options and wine options that Portugal had. So I think the convergence of those 3 things, one, of course, being the very unfortunate one of terrorism in the area, but it really helped to put the spotlight on Portugal. And so 2017, 2018, 2019 were record years, and it was just steady growth.
May I add one point about what Sheree was saying concerning gastronomy? I totally agree with you. And as you know, I've been working in wine tourism for a long time. And one of the things that people are, I would say, discovering now, probably they should have discovered this before, is that gastronomy is a very interesting way of increasing the value of the wine. You have a very, very interesting in the particular case. For instance, red Vinho Verde. It is not an easy wine. It is not. If I have a foreigner visitor, I wouldn't offer him red Vinho Verde. But if we go to Ponte de Lima, we are just in the front of the river, having a nice lunch of papas de serrabulho or rojões or lampreia. I would offer a red Vinho Verde because it is the right food in the right place. So it is a very interesting point because all of them add value.
And a stay overnight because then it will be difficult to drive.
That's it.
After such a rich meal.
Bunny, I'd like to address, I agree, excuse me. I agree with both Professor Brito and with António. I'd like to add one more point because I think the second part of your question was what can be done to maintain this trend or to help
consolidate the trend,
to consolidate the trend. Portugal now has this very unique opportunity, I think, to continue to project itself in the world as a very safe destination. You are number 3 out of the most peaceful countries in the world. And right now, that's always meant a lot, but it really means a lot right now. You're a safe destination. You have amazing food, you have amazing wine, and your government managed the COVID situation very well. Let's hope that these recent resurgence that we've seen lately kind of stay at the national level or the regional level, and we're able to continue to maintain that amazing marketing stance and trend that we have, saying that Portugal is very safe. Also, you're going to get a lot of attention from travelers who are looking to visit Europe without having to worry about the quarantine, right? So it's already been established that visitors who come here, once they're able to come here, will not have to do the mandatory 14-day quarantine. Of course, it will all depend on what's going to happen when they return back home, but that's a completely different story, and that's subject to whatever their home countries are doing. That's going to be another factor that helps. So I think if we just continue to do what we're doing, I would also stress to the hotel management that's on board with us today, make sure you're communicating very well what you're doing to keep people safe and the language that they understand the best, right? So that's really, really important, because this is a very delicate topic, and people will trust you if they're able to communicate and understand you. So make sure that information, a lot of the things that we used to have in the back of the house need to come to the front of the house, where people have access to know what measures are being taken. With our clients, we're even creating contingency plans where we let them know ahead of time, you know, we're going to do everything possible. We work with top suppliers to make sure that everything's perfect as possible. However, if there were a situation where someone in the group or a family were to get ill, we have really good relationships with these hospitals in the area. And that also helps that they know that you have a backup plan and they're not going to just be thrown out to the wolves to survive on their own, right? And depending on what market you're working with, in my case, the US, sometimes people aren't as trusting of health systems in other countries, right? And so if you're able to communicate, no, this is a really good health system, one of the top in the world. This is what would happen if you had to stay over, and give them that information ahead of time to even do their own research, then you're earning their trust, because you're letting them know that you're looking out for them and you're doing everything possible to make sure that their stay is pleasant and safe.
Great point, Sheree. That's right. Great point.
Yeah, great
Indeed. What I have been, yes. From the conversations I had with my clients last week, they're all telling me that, and this is an interesting point, they're making now cleaning activities visible. Cleaning activities in hotels, especially in high-end hotels and resorts, were normally performed, carried out outside the site, out of the sight of customers. It's not so pleasant to see people cleaning, but now on purpose, they're making cleaning activities visible, because guests, they want to make sure they are in a clean place. So they're sanitizing all the time and people are seeing it. They're also, one of them told me, we have got rid of menus. You don't hold menus anymore. We have QR codes. You read the QR code and you get the menu in your phone. You can also, if you're in your room, you can order online and book a table and order your meal online. So when you get to the restaurant of the hotel, your table is booked and ready, and your meal is prepared. So they're really, I mean, hotels in these 3 months have been going through an amazing change in preparing the activity for this new low-touch era. So it's quite interesting to see how they've been managing the situation and making things to earn the trust of the customer, as Sheree well said.
Yeah, as you know, the strategy of the tourism in Portugal is very focused, even before the COVID-19, on the digital and the digital transformation. Do you think this pandemic will accelerate the digital What are, in your opinion, the major gains of this digitalization for the sector? There will be more cost efficiency, HR, customer experience, occupancy management. What are your thoughts about digitalization?
Following my previous words, if you allow me, I would say that we can see digitalization of tourism as a way of getting more efficient operations on one end, but also a way of providing more value for the customer. For instance, if you want to visit a museum, visit Louvre or the British Museum, it is a fantastic experience. But you can do it side by side with a virtual visit. The virtual visit, it is not the same thing, but it adds value. I'm saying, well, paid value. It is value that you have to pay. For instance, before going to visit Paris, I can have a virtual tour in Louvre Museum, and then I go for a physical visit. Or if I don't have money to go to Paris, I can just stay in the virtual visit. So what I think is that digital experiences or the digitalization of tourism is a way of reducing costs on one end, but on the other hand is a way of offering more value to the customers.
Right. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts, António and Sheree?
No, that.
Sorry, we lost António. I can't hear him. So I will pass through a question left by Rui Almeida. Hotels can attract. Hello, António. Sorry, we lost.
I'm sorry. I had an incoming call. This is so weird. When I get incoming calls, it interferes with the Zoom call. I'm sorry. I'm going to shut my phone off.
I was reading, not wanting to interrupt you, but I was reading
some
questions.
Flight mode, although I'm not flying.
For now.
I was just telling, I have no doubt that everything which can go online will go online, no doubt. And there is a tremendous amount of new technologies which will be very helpful for tourism and for other activities in future. 2 years ago, at the World Business Forum, I attend the World Business Forum every year. I'm a regular. I love this event. And I've watched live Dr. Michael Porter saying that in his opinion, augmented reality will be the most important technology in the next 10 years. And then last week, Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, has just supported that opinion and said augmented reality will probably be the most important, even more important than virtual reality. So I believe there are opportunities in exploring new technologies in tourism and in digitizing. I would say mainly back office procedures and operations. But I'm sure Sheree has a lot more to say because I believe digital has an important role in tour operations.
It does. I think that there's a very delicate balance, and I'm sure the other two panelists will agree, between what we can digitalize and then the other things that still need to remain real life, right? We know that now we're not selling high touch as a selling point. That's not our unique selling proposition right now. However, we hope that we go back to high touch, especially within a particular segment that my company services. They travel to different countries because they want to have that support. They want to connect with people. So I do believe that we can use digital to help facilitate a lot of back office activities, but I definitely would not advocate to have it replace the things that are what we're selling, what we're currently attracting people to come visit us here in Portugal to experience.
Okay. And about the technology and the relation with the guests and visitants experience, we have one question here from Rui Almeida. Hotels can attract a new breed of customers by integrating technology in its marketing and revenue management processes. Also, technology can help you unlock new opportunities aimed at improving visitants' or guests' experience. The question is Portuguese tourism and hospitality businesses on forefront of such digital era, or are we lagging behind?
We're not in the forefront. There is, but I would say there is a lot of potential for development.
Yeah. We are
Sheree?
not in the front, we are not behind. We still have a way to go.
There is still a lot to do, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It also helps to analyze this question. I'm not sure if we have the time to do it now, to break it down into the different segments, right? So if we're talking about the type of products that we're creating for more business travelers, millennials, people who are looking to have less communication, even without COVID, this is outside of the pandemic, we're looking to have less communication and just manage everything. Their spa treatments, they want to be able to book without having to call anyone. You know, the groups of people who really enjoy just being able to call up an Uber or a car instead of having to have a conversation with a taxi driver per se, or even valet parking. So with those groups, it will definitely work, and there are plenty of opportunities even here in Portugal to increase that offer. However, once again, as you can probably tell, I'm very hesitant to completely jump on the digital bandwagon, because there's so much that the old world, from the American perspective, right? There's so much that old world offers, and the digital part isn't necessarily a part of that perception when we're thinking about visiting Europe. So we have, you know, if you're working between San Francisco, LA, New York, even LA, Tokyo, there's a different perception of the product that you're going to encounter. But when you come to Europe, you're looking for a different service.
That's right. And in Portugal, one of the pluses you have to offer is authenticity. And people come over a lot for this. So, and you have to humanize the business. So, and tourism is a lot about human interaction. But when I mean digital, I mean mainly back office procedures and operations to make activities and procedures simpler, more efficient, cheaper, and quicker. But of course, you have to humanize and keep the authenticity and the human touch, which is so typical from us, from Portuguese. You have to find a balance. But I also believe, to be honest, I'm going to tell you a little secret here. About 1.5 years, about 15 to 18 months, I suggested to one of my clients in the high-end hospitality business, I consult companies, and to one of my clients, we were discussing about digitalizing, what we could digitalize and digitize in the business, and what sort of technologies we could bring in. And I suggested a very disruptive idea, which has not been accepted, by the way. So, and 18 months later, and after this pandemic, I wonder if my idea would now make a little bit more sense. I told my client back then that the hotel industry could learn from the airline industry and make check-in procedures low touch, online. I mean, I check in online in my flight. So when I arrive to the airport, check-in has been made. So why cannot check in? Why can I not check in online in my hotel? And when I arrive, my check-in has been made, and I receive a code to my room with my room key code, and I go directly to, or I leave my luggage at the entrance and I get my luggage delivered. And so I don't have to stand, especially when there's a queue. Why do I have to queue up and stand for check-in? I believe it makes a little bit more sense now than it did 15 months ago. But I understand, my client told me, António, we want to welcome people. We want to welcome them.
Right.
But I mean,
it's important.
Still, it is important, but still, can you think of, what if we didn't have online check-in in airlines? The hassle it was before, that you had to queue up, and I don't know. I'm just thinking.
I'll just add this one last thing for you to consider, or for our entire group here to consider. Airlines not necessarily position themselves to be beacons of hospitality, whereas a high-end hotel does. And so
Yeah.
what is going to differentiate your high-end hotel from someone else's? You have such well-trained staff at the front office to be able to welcome your guests and to explain the amenities that are available and just give them that extra touch that they need, that they're paying for. Otherwise, just stay in a 3-star hotel or a 4-star hotel if you don't want to have any interaction with someone.
I understand your point, and it makes sense. But I mean, I've flown 10 to 12 hours. I'm tired. I arrived at the hotel and there's a queue. So why don't I go to my room, shower, and then am invited by the hotel manager to sit down for a refreshment or a port wine, and I get all the explanations after my shower?
That could be a different model. And in a lot of the major hotels, specifically in the US, we will have a preferred client queue. Did we just lose António?
Yes, as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that helps to expedite if you are on the preferred client list, of course.
That's right. That's right. Or if you're a regular, or you're a card holder, or a frequent.
We are almost in the 4:30. I will jump for my last question and then see if there are more questions from our guests. Arguably, there is no such thing as a typical tourist, as they can be anything from a photo snapper through the lone backpacker, and including families or romantic escapes or whatever. Which segment of tourists do you think could grow? Do you anticipate growing? And is the industry being proactive or reactive in adjusting its offer? What do you think, Carlos?
I think that we will have to move from the market segments to, I would say, tribes of consumers. Now we are still very much focused on segments, and there are some few very interesting segments. For instance, all of us know that the so-called DINK segment, double income, no kids, is a very interesting segment for tourism. We know that what we also call active seniors is very interesting, because active seniors are people retired but still active. They have money to spend, they want to spend money, because quite often they don't want to leave them to their kids, and they have flexibility to travel all over during the whole year. So very interesting, because they can look for not so high seasons. Another segment is what we can call global clans. Now, there are a lot of people working in other places, And this creates a demand for their families to visit them, or when they come to their own country. It is a very interesting and growing segment, global clan. Another segment is what we can call cosmopolitan commuters. Cosmopolitan commuters, a commuter is someone who lives in Brussels and works in Paris, or what else? We can live in London and work in Milan or so. And this is is more and more common, because you can, in some cases, live in a place where you like, with less taxes and so forth, and working in a totally different place in another country. Another important segment is what we can call the global executive. Global executive is someone who travels very much for work, for attending conferences, congresses, and so forth. But these are segments. This is mainly a matter of characterizing these customers on the basis of demographic characteristics and behavioral characteristics. But what people say is that in the future, the main characteristic or the main feature will have to do with psychological issues. And in this case, what is important is not if people has money or has not so high income, if it is young or old people. What is important is the way of life and what they are looking for. And I have here some interesting tribes, because these are not segments, these are tribes. For instance, people say that in the near future we'll have the simplicity searchers. Simplicity searcher is a tourist that doesn't want too much confusion. Just want, well, I go to an agency, please organize everything for me. We have, for instance, the reward hunters. Reward hunters is the segment of António. It's luxury segment. People who want rewards, want value. They are not so much cared about what they pay, but what they get. We also have the ethical traveler. The ethical traveler is also what António said very much. It is someone who wants authenticity. What ethical issues? The cultural purists, for instance, the social capital seekers. So what we'll see in the next 5-10 years is a move from the traditional segments to the new tribes of travelers. And the new tribes of travelers are much more characterized by the way of life than in terms of income or age or profession or what else. So this is a big trend that we have to be aware of.
Very interesting. Do you want to add something, Sheree or António?
Yes, your question, I believe, we were looking at obviously the paradigm that we currently have. So what's the offer and what's the demand? Of course, everything that we can analyze is pre-COVID. We're not sure exactly how it's going to change moving forward. Professor Brito has given us some suggestions, but I'm pretty sure that research is still pre-COVID, right? So we have this factor that's perhaps going to shake everything up and give us something surprising the next couple of years. Portugal has positioned itself well in that it has an offer for all the different segments. I have been very impressed for a country that's so small to be able to offer something to almost any type of tourist that you have. Lately, over probably the past 4 to 5 years, there's been a focus on really developing the high-end upscale, or as in Europe you would say, luxury tourism in Portugal. And there's been a lot of focus on that, and we have properties, and we have all the suppliers in the market and the supply chain to be able to meet that demand. But we still have the different segments, and we still have suppliers for the different segments. And if things were to continue as they were prior to coronavirus, then I think that we would continue to see growth in all of those different segments because you have the offer. Let's hope that they survive. I guess that's the caveat that I should probably ask, because we have to go back and evaluate exactly which suppliers are still going to be with us moving forward that we had previously. There will be some attrition, I'm sure. I'm not sure what the percentage would be on that.
Very well said.
Add something, António?
No, I'm looking forward to questions. From where I'm standing, I cannot see the questions in the chat box.
Yeah, let's go to.
Glad to address some questions if there are any.
Vanya, may I just add one point? Apart of that, what I said and what Sheree said, I think that an important point is looking for very specific niches. I myself, I worked at the University of Porto, as you know. Now I'm in the Universidade Portugalense, but in these cases, we are working what we call scientific tourism. Scientific tourism is tourism for professors, for researchers, even for students, for Erasmus students. It's a growing, it's a niche. Probably it is a niche. I'm not so no. Probably it is not so a niche so narrow as we can suspect, but it is a niche with a very growing potential. So side by side with this, for instance, religious tourism in Portugal has a huge potential. We only offered Fatima, but we have many things. Even with Jewish community, we could offer and expand these segments. So a part of the big segments, we have to look for these niches of market that are very interesting in terms of potential.
Okay, let's go to the questions. We have one here from Devon Jan. What do you expect from slow travelers such as digital nomads and remote workers looking to stay 3 to 4 months? Do you see this as an opportunity to attract EU remote location independent workers?
Well,
what do you
please.
think? Do you want to answer?
Opportunities to attract remote workers.
Remote workers looking to stay 3 to 4 months, or digital nomads?
Sure. Portugal, and this, after the pandemic, people are very much concerned about health and safety. And as long as you have very good Wi-Fi network and coverage, Portugal has a lot to offer in the mountains, in less and in the fields. I mean, in less crowded places. So I believe there is an opportunity there to explore. And adding on what Sheree has mentioned, Portugal is a small country, but with so much diversity to offer. We have almost 1,000 years of history and culture. We have 900 kilometers of seaside. We have hills and mountains and green forests and I mean, lakes. And I mean, there's a lot to, Portugal is not about sun and beach. So you can, I believe there are opportunities to attract digital nomads and independent remote travelers and settle them in Alentejo or in Serra da Estrela or in Gerês or in Douro Valley. I mean, you name it. Yes. I mean, to be honest, I don't know how is the quality of Wi-Fi over there, and this kind of people, they need Wi-Fi to work. But as long as Wi-Fi coverage is good, there's no limits, no boundaries.
I agree. I'd like to add one more thing to the list of attractive factors that Portugal offers that perhaps you guys aren't very aware of because you're Portuguese and you live here. But Portugal is one of the most culturally tolerant countries I've ever experienced. It's one of the most non-racist countries I've ever experienced. And now in a world where we're seeing increased xenophobia in different markets, Portugal's really standing out as a pleasant, peaceful, welcoming place for everyone. Yeah. So that's something that I'm hearing on my end, people that are mentioning, you know, Portugal seems like it is the place. They have the right combination. They know how to treat their visitors. They know how to treat their own residents, their own citizens. And it's a beautiful place with a lot of diversity to offer.
That's a good point.
It's a high note to end the debate. I'm looking for some questions here, but I see only comments, lots of comments. I don't know if Elaine or Chris want to add something, but we extended a little bit of our time. We exceeded it actually. So
Vania, there's a really long question by Carla, and she took the time to write this. If we could, it looks like there may be a question embedded in her
yes, there maybe is a question, right? Portugal offers a wide range of services and alternatives as far as accommodation, locations, and experiences. These solutions meet almost every budget, but the added value is not always dictated on how much one spends, but on how much one invests in the personal experience, the getaway, the journey, all made to measure for a couple, a family, or a corporate event. This is the right moment, rediscover a country that has been emerging and reinventing itself. As a DMC, the issue is how flexible can we all be if another C-19 wave comes our way, when most hotels and local suppliers are reluctant to refund deposits and postponing programs. This has been a challenge during these uncertain times that may result in last-minute business. Will last minute mean a decrease or an increase in the rates? Years ago, last minute used to mean low cost, but until very recently, pre-COVID, it meant higher cost. Which way are we moving?
Right.
You were right. There was a question here.
There was a question there. Carla, I totally understand where you're coming from. I'm in the same position as a domestic inbound tour operator for the American market. So this is a conversation that we are having with our suppliers, how flexible, because it really boils down to how flexible the suppliers can be, right? As middlemen, which is what we are, we're working either directly with the consumer or working with the travel agency in your foreign market. So I wish I had a really good response to give you right now. All I can tell you is that we're still in that phase. We're trying to figure out which way are we going, as you indicated in your question. I hope that our suppliers are going to be flexible with us, because they understand that this is where we are right now. This situation has completely changed the paradigm that we're used to and that we normally work in. So my clients back in the US require flexibility. If they need to cancel last minute because the borders have closed, then they need to cancel. In the US, we don't work with the voucher system that you guys use here in Portugal. Americans tend to not like that. If their program had to be canceled, then they want a refund, and they want the refund within 15 days. Our Department of Transportation, at the federal level, Department of Transportation, mandated that all of the airlines operating in the United States, either US airlines or foreign airlines, refund all of the flights that were canceled. The airlines themselves wanted to push the voucher program because they want to keep revenue, which we understand. However, you just have to know what the demands are for your clients, your large client base, and then be able to communicate that to your suppliers and hope that you can come up with a temporary interim agreement to just get us past this period of uncertainty during COVID. And then, you know, as we've mentioned before in this session, whatever our future long-term plans are going to be probably will not look like what we need them to do right now. We just need them to work with us now to get travel back on track.
That's right.
Carla, I don't have nothing to add to Sheree because she's the right person to answer your question, but I just wanted to stress one point. You are totally right in your question because probably we'll have more waves in this pandemic and probably we'll have more pandemics in the future. So we have to be prepared for that question that you have raised. I hope that we don't have any more pandemic and I hope that we don't have any more wave in this pandemic, but we have to be prepared. And your question is a key, it encapsulates a key issue because in fact, what you are saying is, are we prepared for a different business model? I don't know. Sheree is the right person to answer and she has already answered, but it is, I totally agree with your question.
Very good. If I may, one last comment. Not on the topic, which has been just beautifully answered. I mean, in business, you have to take risks. This pandemic has brought a new paradigm. We all need to be creative. We all need to think of new ways of solving problems. I know it's tough. I know we don't have answers, but I mean, the likelihood of a new outbreak or in winter is fairly high. So there are no, I mean, as Sheree well said, we don't have ready answers. This is all new. We have to think. Now, my comment was in a different way. This webinar was called, or is called, Innovation in Tourism in Portugal. And we didn't address the topic of innovation very much. And just on a last note, and to everyone who is listening to us, I would like to leave a couple of ideas. If you want, I mean, we are living in changing times, and changing times demand innovation, demand new approaches, demand creativity. And if you want to develop a little bit of innovation in your business, in my opinion, what you have to do is think creatively and think of addressing, there's a formula. If you want to innovate, you need to think the who, the what, and the how. Who are you addressing? Who is your client? Who is your target market? What are you offering? What is your menu? And how are you implementing it? So once you think of your regular who, your regular what, and your regular how, you have to think creatively and find new who's, new what's, and new how's. If you manage to do that, you innovate in your business and you are able to sell a little bit more. That's what we want. Thank you.
Thank you, António. Thank you, Carlos. I have one last question. I don't know if I can put it. We are quickly behind, but Nomad writed, what are you all seeing related to Lisbon, given the COVID issues popping up there are these days? Do you suggest that tourists don't go to Lisbon and other regions? Do you suggest to your clients not to go to Lisbon right now, or how do you?
Would you like for me to answer?
This is a This is a difficult one. I mean, we're not health specialists, but yes.
This is a very difficult question. I pay attention to the news that's being broadcast about Europe and the United States. And so So far, so good. They're not picking up on the fact that our numbers in the capital city have increased regarding COVID lately. Obviously, if that's reported, then it's a fact, and so that's true, and we'll just have to deal with that in the future. My clients or Americans cannot visit Portugal yet. It's still not open to non-Europeans. So that's not something that we're dealing with. I wish I could give you more information, but that's not something that we're having to address currently, right? So maybe in the next 2 or 3 weeks to see how things evolve with these new resurgences of COVID in Lisbon, and also what the perception is for visitors entering into Portugal. It may be a different conversation, but right now we're not really having to address it. And we hope, obviously, for the well-being of everybody, that this situation gets under control quickly.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sheree, Carlos, and António, was a real pleasure to be here. I don't know if Chris or Elena want to...
Yeah, I'd like to just say a few words of thank you to all the speakers and all the participants. It was a testament that we still have so many participants online. Shows how gripped they were with the conversation. So well done to you all for maintaining their attention. Tourism is a big topic, and we could have debated so many different twists and turns in this theme. On the 29th, we have the Secretary of State for Tourism, Rita Marks, will be our guest speaker. So hopefully we'll see all of you again then. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Vanya, for you being an excellent Master of Ceremonies.
Thank you,
Vanya. Thank you, Professor
Thank
Brito.
you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Carlos. António.
Bye.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, the Chamber of Commerce.